Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Inspired and Empowered Living TV show and podcast. We are live Tuesday mornings at 11 a.m. Eastern on Talk4TV, W4WN.com, and my YouTube channel. And so glad that you're joining us today. And today we are going to be talking about creating healthy, loving, and joyful relationships. Find out how you can create a healthy, loving, joyful relationship. Learn the difference between an unhealthy relationship and an extraordinary one. Discover how to understand and transform your relationships in new ways so that you can live an inspired and empowered life. Together, let's create a life you love. I'm your host, Nanci Deutsch, licensed clinical social worker and certified hypnotherapist and intuitive breakthrough expert. I combine my counseling, coaching, and intuitive abilities to transform your life. So the first thing that I really want to talk about is I would like to read a quote from a book. I love this book. So if you want to have a conscious, healthy relationship, you definitely want to get the book. And the book is called The Journey of Co-Commitment by Gay Hendricks and Kathleen Hendricks. And until recently, let me start all over. Until recently, all we required of our relationships was survival, security, and continuation of the species. Now, we've added a new requirement. Our relationships must bring happiness, fulfillment, creativity, and even enlightenment. From the perspective of our work and our experience together, this requirement is perfectly natural and offers immense possibilities, but it calls for a rare kind of courage and a new set of skills. Brand new territory is being explored, as wide open and full of possibility as the frontier of outer space. Courage is required because practically every step you take will be a venture into the unknown. After all, how many times in your life have you actually seen the kind of relationship you want? And again, that's from Conscious Loving, The Journey of Co-Commitment by Gay and Kathleen Hendricks, Hendricks. And I see we have Allie in the house. Good morning, Allie. So the first thing that I want to define for all of you is, what is a healthy, loving, joyful relationship? An extraordinary one. What is it? First of all, the way that I define it is a relationship when two people come together And when I'm talking about relationships, I'm talking about romantic relationships, of course, but I'm also talking about any type of relationship. You can have really close, intimate friendships that can be life transforming. You can definitely be able to have, you can have parent-child relationships, whether you're the parent and the child, adult children, or you can have, maybe you're the adult child and you can have transformative relationships in your life. So I really want you to know that creating healthy, loving, and joyful relationships is possible. Now, the reason why I decided to start with self love is because all your relationships start with you. Yes, even the ones that trigger you most. And when I say trigger, you feel an emotional reaction, they set you off. You may feel angry or frustrated, or if you've been triggered, or you feel guilt or fear, all of those could be triggers in your relationships. And I will say relationships are make life more exciting, worth living when you have really good ones. And they can also make life challenging, and they can also be your greatest teachers. All relationships can teach you. And so learning to navigate the waters of relationships is a powerful journey. So a healthy, loving, extraordinary relationship is when the whole is more than the sum of its parts. When each partner, okay, I'll definitely get to the question. I saw it come in. When each partner is living and moving towards their potential, when together as a couple, they are supporting each other to live their potential, and they work as a team and they handle conflict. There's really great communication, and they're able to rise above conflict and create more intimacy because of it. And so, again, this is all types of relationships, including romantic relationships. Because relationships unto themselves, it doesn't matter what kind it is, they can be your greatest strength and also your greatest challenge. So, I know we have a question from Country Corners Gazette. Don't all relationships have some kind of trigger? So, okay, so I am going to do a scale of triggering for you. Maybe I need to do the relationship scale of triggering. I don't know. I'll see. Anyway, when you have a relationship, there are some relationships that are going to trigger you a lot more. Do all relationships have triggers? Probably, because bottom line is we're all human. And no matter how amazing a relationship is, at some point, you may end up being affected by your relationship in some way or other. So know that all relationships may have some type of trigger, but some relationships are going to trigger you a lot more than others. And it doesn't mean that the relationships that don't trigger you much, or maybe you have very little, maybe you have none. I don't know if there's a none, but some relationships you are definitely easier relationships than others. And those the ones that trigger you the most, They are serving a purpose in your life. And when you heal, because every time you have a trigger, and I see things came in from Misty, so we'll get to that. Every time you have a trigger, it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. What it means, it's a way, it's something that's catching your attention so that you can heal yourself and either A, not be triggered, or then you can take some type of action. And we'll get to all of that as the show goes on. And I see Misty said, yes, that would be a good show. Relationship trigger show. Okay. And also a trigger in general show. Okay, so I hear you. Can triggers be good? Country Corners Gazette. So I hear you, Misty, about doing a show on triggers in general, and I will definitely put that down as a show for the future. So, and Country Corners Gazette said, can triggers be good? So here's the thing. When you get triggered, and let me define a trigger so that we're all on board with the same understanding what exactly I'm talking about, because not everybody may know what that means. So first of all, let me do my Psych 101. You have your conscious mind, and your conscious mind is the part of you that chose to tune in today, or whether you're listening live or at a later time. So thank you, conscious mind of yours. And your conscious mind makes decisions when you're conscious and aware. And your conscious mind, when you make a conscious aware decision, it empowers you. Now, your subconscious mind or your unconscious mind, and they're both, I call them both the same thing. They have recorded, your subconscious mind has recorded every moment that you have been alive, every breath, everything, from the moment you were conceived to present time. And it also has recorded past lives and ancestral issues. Now, what happens when you get triggered? There is a reaction, and it's coming from your subconscious mind. That's where limiting beliefs, emotions, and trauma is basically stored in your subconscious mind. And that includes your body. It includes energy fields like chakras, which are energy centers that definitely affect you. And all of those energies, all of those things are definitely part of the subconscious mind too. And you have your superconscious mind, which is the part of you that is your higher self, a wise, unconditionally loving part, and your soul, the core energy essence of who you really are, the light, the love. And so all of those aspects. And what happens is when you're in a relationship with someone else, we all want our needs to be met, every one of us. So you're doing your needs wanting to be met, and they're doing their needs wanting to be met. And then what happens sometimes is there's conflict. Your needs, maybe they're not hearing you. Maybe they're not seeing you. Maybe you're not feeling heard or loved or validated. And if you start feeling angry, sad, or fearful, shame, guilt, those are all triggers. And triggers are good in the sense they may not always feel good in the moment, okay? So I'm just putting that out there, all right? Triggers don't necessarily feel good in the moment. However, they're giving you information and messages on what you need to heal so that you can feel more empowered, more inspired, have a life and have relationships that you truly want. And as you heal those relationships, as you heal those issues, your relationships can and will change. So I know we have another question, and then I'm going to give you an example. Actually, let me give you an example first, and then. So, for example, I've talked about Jenny and Jimmy. Jenny she was a very giving, loving, kind woman, okay? And Jimmy he's a good guy. He's a really good guy. But what would happen is Jenny would trigger Jimmy, and then Jimmy would go into a rage and start screaming and yelling. And when he would do that, Jenny would get triggered. And what would happen is she would get really small. She would freeze. And this is all what happens is when you get triggered, you are either acting and you're reacting, and you can become aggressive and fight back. You can run and hide, or you can freeze. It's the stress reaction. And there may be other feelings there as well. But usually when you get triggered by someone, you're going into a regress state, an earlier age, when a core issue was triggered, was activated. Trying to find other words for you. So Jenny and Jimmy, what would happen is in their relationship, it was a really hard pattern. And then after the rage, Jimmy would feel guilty and he would be angry at himself that he did it because he felt out of control. He did not like having the rages, but he never learned differently. And Jenny didn't know why. She wanted to speak out. She wanted to speak her truth. She wanted to say, stop. You can't do this to me anymore, Jimmy. And she couldn't. She froze. That's literally what happens when you have a freeze reaction. And so what happened was they finally came to the realization that they needed help. And they decided to come in for counseling. And as we started working together, Jimmy discovered the source of his rage was what he learned. He learned it when he was younger. He learned it from his father, who was also a rager. And he also learned that Jenny was really triggering his mother because she would do things and he would feel manipulated, or Jenny would say something and it was innocent, but it triggered his old stuff, and he ended up going into a rage. And so Jimmy learned how to calm his anger. He learned what was underneath the rages so that he wasn't so reactive. Jenny learned that her reaction, her freeze reaction, again was protective. And her father was abusive, and that in her family, he was a rager also. And he was abusive and physically abusive as well. And so when Jimmy would go into the rages, it triggered her father. and she got so triggered, she would shut down. She went into overwhelm. That is what happens with the freeze reaction, is that you just get so overwhelmed by all the emotions. You can't speak. You really shut down. And so that is an example. What would happen is they knew they needed help. And as they got help, each one of them healed as an individual, and they healed as a couple. And now they're able to communicate. Jimmy has learned to control his rages. And Jenny is able now to speak her truth. And she doesn't have the freeze now reaction the way she used to. Now, is it 100%? They're still learning, they're still growing, they're in the journey. And that's what counts, is being in the journey. That's the most important thing. So hopefully Jenny and Jimmy were an example to help you understand how powerful it could be when, yeah, the triggers aren't fun and they don't feel good in the moment, whatever the emotion is coming up. But it is a sign. And I believe it's a healing sign, so that you can discover what's underneath the emotion so that you can heal. And the more you heal it, the more things change in your life and in your relationships. Okay, so I know we have another question from Country Corners Gazette. Is there really that much recording space, or do things delete out of the subconscious? So, the subconscious mind is huge. Well, things get deleted out of the subconscious when you intend to do healing work, when you intend to let go of things, you pray. Now, it can happen in different ways. And I'm always talking about doing your clearing. So clearing can be using prayer. It could be doing the morning pages by Julia Cameron, how you or journaling, just regular journaling and letting out whatever's coming up for you. It could be through meditation. It could be through EFT, tapping. So when you make a conscious intention to clear the energy, you are clearing it. And so what happened was, and know that the subconscious mind is huge, because it's part of the infinite energy of who you are. It's huge. And so really, it's really important to keep doing your work around what can happen and how things can change for you when you're doing your work. So let me talk a little bit about, like, what is a healthy relationship and what is an unhealthy relationship, okay? So first of all, and this is something that somebody asked, all relationships are going to have issues in some way or other. Like I said before, we're all human. Now, some relationships are going to have more issues than others, okay? And when the other person triggers you, and the way that you know that you've been triggered, okay, is you know that you've been triggered where all of a sudden you start feeling something. So you may feel angry, fearful, maybe you feel sad. Maybe someone's trying to guilt you, and then you start feeling guilt or shame. People shame each other. And any of those emotions are a sign that you've been triggered in some way. And so what happens is you want to do your piece, and hopefully you have somebody a person that's working on themselves as well, ideally. And I will want you to know that even if you don't have somebody who's working on themselves, when you tune into you and you work on healing you, and then you communicate in a healthy, appropriate way, where you're not blaming, shaming, or dumping on the other person, they are more likely to hear you. And when that happens, the relationships can still transform. So know that anything is possible in the realm of relationships. Now, another thing that happens with relationships is, remember I said that needs, we all have our needs. You have your needs, they have their needs. And when old needs are not being met, you can feel triggered. Okay? And usually, now this is all what happens when issues arise in relationships. And when you are not feeling seen or heard or loved or valued or appreciated, good enough, that you matter, all of those can trigger you in a relationship. When the other person is not meeting your expectations. And expectations, I will just tell you, really set you up to be triggered. Because no person is ever going to meet all your expectations. And so it's learning to have more realistic expectations. And ideally, and this is what we're all working on, including myself, is being able to let go of expectations. And expectations, it's hard to let go of them when you have close relationships, whether it's a romantic relationship. And romantic relationships tend to have even more expectations because you have that other added piece of sexuality. So just know that really look at your expectations. And here's the thing, are your expectations too high? And what's also coming to me as I'm talking, if you are in a relationship that's not healthy, and are your expectations high enough? You deserve to be loved, valued, honored, respected, heard, seen, acknowledged. And in all relationships, you may not have that all of the time, but you deserve to have that a lot of the time. And if you're in an emotionally abusive or challenging or toxic relationship in any way, whether it's romantic or friendship or family, then you need to look at, is that a relationship you want to continue to be in? So I see we have a question from Misty. There's another show idea, a show on should we put expectations on things? Okay, gotcha. Thank you, Misty. And the other thing is boundaries. And boundaries are huge. They're so important. Boundaries are important in every relationship. And your job is to know what your boundaries are, to know what it is that's going to serve you, where your limits are. And if somebody's going past those limits, then you need to set boundaries. and learning to say no. This is all part of self-love and essential self-care. Learning to say no, learning to say, or no, I'm not going to do that, or not right now. It's huge for you. And having a healthy relationship, and I'm going to go into this more, is someone honoring your boundaries. We'll talk about that shortly. In the meantime, what I just want to let you all know is that tonight I will be doing a past life regression, discovering more of who you really are. I'm doing it with the Edgar Casey Center, and you can still register. It's virtual, so it's on Zoom. And Rebel is going to put the link in the chat, and it's $30 to register. And I really support you in joining us, because last week, part of what happens for you is understanding more about who you are, and that includes your past lives, because they can and will affect you and your relationships. And I have done past lives that have transformed relationships. I'll give you an example. So Selma came to me, and she was not being treated well by this person. And she knew she needed to stop being in a relationship with this person, but she couldn't. It felt like almost an addictive energy, and she couldn't stop. And so what happened was, I knew that we needed to do a past life regression to resolve the issue. And we did. And we helped her work through the issue from that other lifetime. And after the past life regression, Selma was able to let go of the relationship. And she let go of the relationship. And within a month or two, she actually met her future partner. And now she is happily married. So that can be the power of doing and clearing old stuff, including past life regression. So Rebel has put it into the chat. It's the Edgar Casey Center, the past life regression. It's the Edgar Casey Center of New York. So if you're listening at a later time and you're not seeing the link, I will be doing other programs with them as well. So definitely check it out. And so, what is a healthy relationship and what is an unhealthy relationship? So let's talk about healthy. When you are able to really trust each other, and there's honesty, there's respect, mutual respect. Each person is taking responsibility for themselves and their issues. So even if ideally you want to have two people working on themselves, but even if you don't, when you communicate with the other person, they hear you, they acknowledge what they've heard, and you start seeing perhaps changes in the other person. They are hearing you and listening to you. And they want to hear you. You're in a relationship, they want to hear your needs and wants and desires. And you feel heard and seen and accepted. Your boundaries are honored. And each of you are individuals working on growing towards your potential, and you're coming together. As together, what happens is that you rise together in potential. And you learn to support each other, to acknowledge each other. And there's healthy communication. Healthy communication is you focus on the behavior, not the person. So when you're having healthy communication, you are not youing. You are so blah, 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 blah. You're so stupid, or you're such a jerk. That is not going to help the situation. That will trigger the other person and put them on the defense. Whereas if you say, I felt, you want to focus on the behavior. I felt really ignored or not seen or heard when you never texted me back, or you didn't return my call. And, or you could say, when, starting with the behavior, when you didn't return my call, I felt that I didn't matter to you. And so all that is healthy communication. You see the best in each other, and you support each other to move in the direction of your dreams, supporting each other to have that inspired and empowered life. So when a relationship is unhealthy, okay, and I really want to support all of you in knowing that on some level, you know the truth. Now, if you have communicated in healthy ways, or you're not heard or seen or valued, and you've worked on it and tried, that is something that you need to look at. Is this relationship still serving you? And you may need help. You may need help in being able to separate from that person. I really want to support you in, if you're feeling really stuck in a relationship, then and there's a lot of trauma, you may need to go to a counselor or a therapist. And if you're feeling stuck and you want to move forward, or it's time to leave and you want the support, you may need a coach. So depending on what you need, and sometimes you may need both. So just know that having that, you may need support in the physical world to do what you need to do to let go of an unhealthy, toxic relationship. When the relationship is unhealthy, when someone is acting out their anger and their feelings, like what happened with Jimmy, raging is an unhealthy behavior. But what happened was Jimmy was willing to work on himself. He was willing to change his behavior. And so the relationship, now I'm going down a list of unhealthy behaviors or things. It doesn't mean if that happens that the relationship has to end. It means that the relationship needs help. And you may need extra support to help the relationship. So if someone's acting out their feelings, their anger, a lot of time it's anger, they're screaming, yelling. Now, if there's hitting or fighting, the most important thing you do is take care of you and make sure you're safe and find a safe space and a safe place. So then the other thing is if there's control or manipulation, or they're unwilling to hear you. Now, sometimes what happens in relationships is it's like you can't hear them and they can't hear you. And there's like this standoff. Again, you may need help. You may need a mediator. You may need someone, a third party, to help you be able to resolve the communication. If there's an abuse of power, physical, emotional, or sexual, if there's no respect for each other, or one of you is not respecting the other, not enough separation. If sometimes what happens is couples become so close, or couples or close friendships, you become so close that there's not a separation between me and you. And it's really important to learn you each have separate identities. And if there's little or no intimacy. Now, I don't know where this came from, but I love this. Intimacy. Into me I see. Intimacy is a way for you to understand and discover more about yourself. So, all of those are aspects of healthy relationships and unhealthy relationships. And if there are any questions on any of those, anything that I said, type them in. I'm not going to get to the questions today because we're coming to an end, but I will definitely answer them next week. So type in your questions before we end. And I'm going to continue this show on healthy relationships, healthy, loving, joyful relationships, part 2. That's what it's all about. And definitely, I look forward to hearing and seeing you. And we are live Tuesdays at 11 a.m. Eastern on talk4tv.com, w4wn.com, my YouTube channel. And you can find the podcasts on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Pandora, Apple, and Amazon. And I wish you all an inspired and empowered day and an inspired and empowered week. Have a great one, everybody. Bye for now.